Hello, welcome to the tutorial. Today we're going to take a look at how to fix squealing disc brakes. In 99% of the cases, it's dependent on one thing. The brake caliper in here houses, I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. The brake caliper here, or support depending on where you're from, houses the brake pads. This is the brake disc, and what usually happens is there's some dirt, oil, or other contaminants on the brake pads. So the easiest way to fix it would be to remove the front wheel or rear wheel. First of all, clean the disc with a good solvent. Don't use anything that leaves a residue. So if you have to use something like an engine degreaser or something like that, something that you can wipe off and it evaporates. And after that, we're going to take out the brake pads, and I'm going to show you how to first of all heat them briefly, and then we're going to take off the top coat to basically remove all the contaminants. Okay, so first of all, alright, so before we start, I just wanted to show you my setup. My tool stand still hasn't arrived, and what I did was I put this 2x2 up against the windowsill, and I screwed it down. And this actually works as a really good repair stand if you have nothing else available, because you can set it up on different positions. And this is the, I mean, you know, if you don't have any room, or if you don't have any money for a proper repair stand, you can actually use this and support it on different angles, on the seat, through the frame here, underneath the fork, you know, all kinds of different versions. So I'm going to show that in a different video as well. But first things first, let's get started on the front wheel. So first I'm going to release the quick release. Okay. And I'm going to remove the front wheel. Okay, I'm going to set it aside. As I should before, I'm going to show you the brake pads and how to get them out. I'm just going to take a look. Alright, so I'm going to change the camera angle a little bit. Okay, so we're at a bit of an awkward angle, but here you can see the caliper, the fork leg, and the cable down here. Now, when I push the brake lever, you can actually see that this side is moving, and that side and this side is stationary. This is very typical for mechanical disc brakes, and usually only one of the. God damn it! All right, so we can see the brake support or caliper here. We have one brake disc on this side and one brake disc on this side. Now if I push the lever, you can actually see that one brake disc is moving towards the center of the wheel. Now this is very typical for mechanical disc brakes, to have just one side that moves. I don't even think I've ever seen one that has two moving sides. Now with hydraulic brakes, you usually have two sides that move together, and this is the reason for the mechanical brakes. You know, the reason why it operates like this is to keep the costs down. Okay, now I'm gonna now these are some Hayes brake pads, and these have a very finicky system, and you're gonna need some pliers just to get them out. The other systems have a slightly better way of removing the brake pads, but I'm going to be back in just 1 second. Okay, so the way that I know how to remove brake pads from a disc brake that is this type, where it doesn't have the pin on top, is first of all you have to loosen the brake cable. Okay, such. Okay, this brings in the pad in this direction. Okay, and what you do is you drive in the opposite piston, and when you reach a certain point, such as this, you should be able to grapple it and pull it out, as this. Okay, now I'm gonna leave this piston as it is because it's not going to be bothering us for now. But when you look at the brake pad, you can actually see that it's extremely dirty. And while it does have enough pad life on it, and it does have enough pad life on it, enough of the braking compound, that it's well enough. It's good enough to clean it up. So we got this one out. Basically, we made this piston go inside the housing more. We drove this bolt in, so it pushed this brake pad away from the center, and then we could easily pull it out. Otherwise, if you don't drive it in, it's going to be very difficult to pull it out, because this bolt is magnetically charged, which means it's going to grapple the sides pretty well. Okay, now I'm going to set this aside, and the way to get the other one out is you drive this bolt away from the center, as such. Okay, you push this up, and if you're lucky enough, such, you should be able to pull it out. Dagnabbit. Okay. There we go. Now this brake pad is also pretty worn out, but this brake pad is actually worn on an angle, which isn't that good. But a lot of these cheap disc brakes, they don't have very good calipers, so we're gonna put it back the same way as it came in, and we're just going to take off the top surface. Okay, so let's move on to the workbench. Okay, so we have a heat gun on the table, and we have the brake pads over here. Now the next step is to take one of the brake pads in between pliers, such like this. Okay, like this. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put it on high, let it heat up for a few seconds. Okay, and first of all I'm going to heat the back side, the metal side of the brake pads, just a little bit. Okay, and now I'm going to flip it over and heat this side. And I'm going to probably heat it for 15 seconds, because you don't want to burn it. Yeah, it needs a bit more. So maybe 20 seconds. Okay. Now, I don't know if you could see this, but it actually cleared out some bubbles. It started bubbling a little bit and releasing smoke. So this means you've burned out the oil. We can set this aside, and now we'll do the same thing with the other one. Also, if you can, smell the it's a very specific smell when you burn these or heat these up. It smells a little bit like plastic, but if you smell that smell, you should take it off heat, because then you've burned off the top layer. Okay. And when you look at the pad, you can actually see some oil on top there. So yeah. Yeah, I'm smelling it already. Okay. So we've burned off the oil from the top layer. About 15-20 seconds, maybe a little bit more if needed. Now I'm gonna let it cool off. Okay, now I'm gonna let it cool off, and I'm gonna get my sandpaper and then we'll sand them. Alright, so they've cooled off a little bit, and I got myself a piece of sanding paper. This is 120 grit, and you can go down to maybe 100, but not any less, because then it starts becoming too coarse. Alright, so we have our piece of sandpaper. It's 120 grit. You can be in the vicinity of 100 to 140, 160, but not any finer. It's not any good. It's not going to take off material, and going any coarser is also bad because it's going to take off a bit too much material. So make sure you have a flat surface. Usually a table is very good. And what you do is you take your pad in your hand and you run it across like this. Okay, as you can see, the difference between color is night and day. This is a clean pad, this is a dirty pad. And what this heating does is it releases the top layer of the pad. I'm going to set this aside. Yep, it's nice and clean. Just blow this stuff away from your face, because it's not nice to inhale. Okay, and do the other one the same way. Okay, and you can actually see how much dirt and other stuff is coming off. All right. Okay, so we did the brake pads. We heated them, we sanded them. Next up, we're gonna do the brake disc. Now, I took this off. I took this off a different bike, but the principle is the same. You get a nice clean rag, not any oil or any dirt on it, and I have this. It's a very strong paint thinner, very strong. Now, because this is a solvent, it actually will clean the surface of the disc, and then evaporate very quickly. Now, this is more of a precaution. Usually the brake disc doesn't have that much oil on it, but it's a good practice of doing it. It's a good practice to do it, just to make sure that when you go through so much trouble cleaning the pads and everything else, that you don't leave some oil residue on the brake disc. And it's basically, you just clean it off. Okay, the other side. Okay, and you're done. That's how easy it was. And you can use some degreasers, stuff like that, but you don't have to take it off your wheel. You can just take a small rag and run it across on both sides at the same time. This cleans it up as well. Okay, so let's head back to the bike and reinstall the brake pads and then the front wheel. Okay, so let's try to seat the brake pads back in again. So I'm going to do this side first, the one that doesn't move, And as an added precaution, when you put the brake, when you've done after you have sanded and cleaned the brake pads, just try to make sure that you don't put your fingers on the braking surface or anything like that, because then you might just introduce oil, and you know you have to clean it up again. Okay, so that one went in quite well. Okay, and the other side. Okay, just make sure there's no gunk or anything else on the bottom here. Okay, seems to be going fine. Okay, and there we go. Just to make sure. Okay. Alright. Seems to be working. Okay, so we have the brake pads back in. I'm gonna put the